cold. The bass are deep because they're trying to get away from the cold. And the bass are not processing. They're just animals that are existing. The deer don't go deeper in the wood when it gets hot. That the birds don't start flying lower when it gets hot to stay away from the sun. Things in nature, they ain't tripping like we are. They don't need sunscreen. They don't need air conditioning. They're not rolling the windows down. None of that. This is where they live. They're not tripping like we are when it's hot, when it's cold, or all the other things. So we kind of have to release the idea of thinking that bass are processing the environment like we do as humans. And so what you're about to watch, I'm fishing really shallow. It won't look like I'm fishing shallow, but I'm fishing shallow, probably 1 to 6 foot. And summertime, 90 degree water. I'm going to show you. I got a couple clips of me fishing here. I want to actually even start off with that too. Start off with showing you a few clips of fishing Gunnersville. Let's see, where did I save that to? Where did I save my clips to? Let's just type it in the search bar. This will give you a visual idea of what I'm looking at, and I'm gonna stop and go here a little bit just to give you a better idea. Oh, I hate when it does that. It gives me sound on both ends. All right. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna stop it right here just to begin with. So what I'm fishing right here, this is a major flat. To give you some context, all of this area out here, I'm not sure if you can see my pointer. This is a long flat that just kind of sticks out way in the middle of this creek here. You can see it's a bunch of islands here. And I strategically hunted out this area for one reason. I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But point being, where I'm fishing submerged hydrilla. I guess all hydrilla is submerged. Not necessarily. Sometimes hydrilla mats out to the surface. This hydrilla is not matted out to the surface. It's growing along the bottom. But what makes it good is the fact that there's a road bed that runs through this hydrilla bed. And so you know that grass does not grow on rock or hard. It doesn't grow on roads. It'll grow in the cracks of your concrete, but grass, for the most part, does not really grow on anything that's hard or rocks. Grass grows on good, soft, loamy soil. So you got all this good loamy soil and this grass growing up really nice and healthy all around it. But then there's a roadbed that runs through here and it makes just this clean spot, almost like a highway for fish to move up and down in. I kind of found this a little bit by accident, to be honest with you. And the first day of the tournament, I actually didn't catch them on a tournament, on a square bill, on a crankbait. I ended up figuring this out during the tournament. And once I did, life got really good for me. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, that fish is not small. Takes a while to land this one. I'm sorry, it's a little bit. Lands was my biggest one that day. Bruh. That was a big one. What you like talking about, baby? Yes. Same place. You know, it looks a little different. This is actually the next morning. Throwing the square bill across this grass. Like I said, you can't see that grass, but It's just below the surface. I was like, dude, that must be some grass or something. Oh gosh. All right. No, they're good. All right, so let's break this down. I wanna talk about this area, how I found it, what's making it good. Let's get into all the juicy stuff that you probably need to know and see if you can apply this to where you live and where you fish. Let me get back to my internet webs here. So discovering this area. So let me give you a little bit of context. It's Gunnersville. It's early June, early mid June. It's about this time of the year, honestly. So I take off from practice. Gunnersville has been a place that I fished a bunch in my life. It's this. If you don't know much about Gunnersville, haven't been there, you should plan a trip to Gunnersville. There's a few lakes in the country they live up to the hype that they have. Gunnersville's one. Some of the northern fisheries, Champlain, I feel like lives up to the hype. Some of the Florida places are overrated, if you ask me. But most of those places you hear about up north, they're just as good as people act. They say they are. And Gunnersville, Chickamauga, really good. Um, you go there. I've had a lot of history on Gunnersville, but I feel like every time I've went to Gunnersville, I've caught fish in different areas. But there's one thing that I picked up on early on when I started fishing Gunnersville. When I say early on, I'm talking, I think my first trip to Gunnersville was 2012, 2013, somewhere around in there. So I've been fishing the lake, what is that, 14 years or so, 14 or 15 years now at this point. And one thing I've kind of picked up on is there's fish that always live shallow on Gunnersville. When I say shallow, a lot of times people think bank beating, going down a shoreline. And my experiences taught me that Gunnersville is really not a good bank beating lake. Fish live shallow, but I've had a hard time trying to get anything going with any kind of consistency going down a shoreline. Where I fish at home, if you're fishing shallow, more than likely you're just going down a shoreline, throwing at visual targets. Gunnersville is a good place to fish shallow, yet fish offshore. And I feel like that's probably one of my strengths, which we'll get to that part in a minute. But I love fishing shallow offshore. So when I fish shallow offshore, Gunnersville gives me a lot of options. And one of those options is fishing around islands. Gunnersville has a lot of islands around it, and those islands create these little places that are way offshore, but these little saddles and points and high spots. And those high spots I have grass or sand around them. And in this case, I had roadbed, grass, and sand. So I had all these elements that lined up on this place. And I like intentionally sought that. I was like, man, I'm gonna go to this practice. I'm spending a day and a half just fishing around islands. And this particular creek is called Allred's Creek. Allred's Creek has a lot of islands and saddles in between them. And when I say a saddle, so that verbiage doesn't confuse you, if you can imagine a landmass, an island, and then another island, and then in between, you know how like there's water in between the two islands, and you could potentially run your boat through there, but you're kind of risking it type of thing. The bass on Gunnersville use those type of areas a lot. We fish them a lot here in the Carolinas too, but they really like those areas where the I'll pull my camera down a little bit, where I call them just saddles. They use those a lot. So I intentionally went into the tournament looking for those areas. Allred's Creek had a lot of islands, so that's where I started it. Lo and behold, I just kind of fell on it that time. Like that was one of the times where I guessed it. I had an idea, I tried it, and I looked out and it was right. That happens very rarely in fishing. I did scrounge around a little bit here and there, fishing a few lily pads, throwing a drop shot on some of the grass here and there. And that did work okay. But when I got to Allred's and I started fishing these flats, I knew I had something. I knew I had something. So that's kind of how I discovered this area. Let's go to our next slide, Mike. I forget what we talk about in our next group here. So we want to talk about what makes that area that I was fishing so special. And so I do want to I kind of want to back up a little bit. I talk about the lake breakdown method a lot here in the app. And so I 100% used that in this particular tournament. Even though it was in June, there was still a little bit of a hint of a shad spawn happening at Gunnersville that year. This was a summertime tournament. The water was hot, but we're having those fluctuations in hot and cold. And there's still a little bit of a shad spawn left. And so knowing that, it pushed me to look in specific areas, mainly staying shallow and shallow grass, because a lot of times the shad spawn around the shallow grass. So I used that lake breakdown method. Like it was shining bright and clear in this tournament because I did, like I said, I looked for what was available. What's available? Islands, grass, shallow spots, roadbeds, etc. So I used that. I knew that was what was available. Um, I knew there was a little bit of a shad spawn still happening. So that allowed me to pick certain baits, bigger swim baits, sprinter baits, crank baits, those kind of baits. Be honest with you, I knew that was happening, but I didn't really find much of a shad spawn in practice. Not really. Not really. Or at least I didn't recognize it in the beginning. That'll make sense. That comment will make sense here in a little bit. But more importantly, like I knew my strength is fishing shallow grass, which is ironic because where I live, I literally don't have access to fishing any grass other than fishing ponds. I'll probably have to drive 80 miles before I could find a lake with grass. Maybe longer. It could be 100 miles. Closest I can think of a place with grass, like Hydrilla. Russell has like this bankweed stuff. I can fish some bankweeds in a few lakes, Russell and some other places, but I don't really have anywhere to catch many fishing grass. And so, ironically, that's one of my strengths. So I go looking for that in this tournament. And then I discovered a little main lake flat in between these islands, a little bit of hydrilla, a little bit of grass in there, and rest is history. Rest is history from there. But that's my confidence is fishing that style and fishing shallow grass, fishing crankbaits, fishing shallow grass. Like when I figured that out, that's my deal. What makes this area special is what I'm supposed to be talking about. Okay. Makes this area special. I kind of already alluded to it. If you listened to the live earlier today, one thing that Mark talked about was he was talking about flipping grass and finding these little dark holes. There's a little dark hole here, a little dark hole there. Well, those dark holes are voids in the grass. And when I was fishing, when you're fishing grass, you're looking for either voids or where it's thickest. I talk about this all the time. The grass fishing is very simple. For grass is thickest or grass is the thinnest. Well, this particular instance, I'm looking for voids. And so when I would pull up to these saddles on Gunnersville, these little shallow spots in between two islands or something like that, or a shallow point of grass, what I was looking for is where that grass was kind of splotchy and had a lot of space in between it. What does that mean? If I got space in between the grass, that means that the bottom is probably either sand or rock. I always talk about this. Y'all know I have a landscaping background, and so you look in your yard, the grass always grows best where the soil is real loamy and nice and it gets a lot of sun. Anywhere there's shade or the soil is hard packed or rock, the grass doesn't grow well. It works the same way for hydrilla, lily pads, coontail, any kind of aquatic vegetation. It grows really well in that loamy soil. And anytime you start to see it broken up and patchy and kind of scappy, you know that something's going on with the bottom composition. So we can use that for our advantage in fishing. If we see the grass start to break up, it's either getting deeper or you're getting into rock or sand. And so this area, like I mentioned, has a road bed running through it. Grass can't grow on that. And then on top of that, it has a little high spot in the middle where it's hard, like hard sand. When you put your poles down, it just kind of, and it's not deep, 2, 4, 5, 6 foot, 5 or 6 foot on the side of it. On top is like 2 foot. You couldn't cross it on your boat, but you could throw up there and catch fish on it. And so that's what made the area special, is all of these elements working together. A little bit of a shad spawn, hard spot, high spot, deep water access. That's what was making it special. Let's jump to the next slide, Mike. So let's talk about some of the things. Anytime you go in a tournament, we talked about this earlier when I was talking with Mark about fishing up north. When you're going in these tournaments, you need to always be preparing for changes that are going to happen, whether that be weather, boat traffic, water level moving up or down, water clarity getting clear or dirty. There's almost always going to be something that's going to be working against you. And your mindset when you're fishing tournaments, it needs to always be, I'm showing up today to be a problem solver. Most of the time we think we're going to go back in the tournament to fish that we found in practice. We're going to show up and we're just going to catch them. And every once in a while that does happen. I mean, every once in a while that happens, but it's very rare. Most of the time you're going to show up to these tournaments, you can go to practice and you're going to get an idea of what you should be doing, what you probably should be doing. And then in the tournament, you've got to remain flexible enough to adjust to what may change. Now, in this particular instance, on day one, and you can go see this, just type in my name in Lake Gurnersville, you can see this tournament. Maybe I should put that in the chat here. I probably should put that in the chat somewhere on the app. I show up to this tournament day one, and I don't know, I had 15 something pounds on day one, and I caught all of those fish on drop shot on day one. It was slick, calm. I caught them all on drop shot. I go back on day two, and I don't even think I picked up the drop shot much on day two. On day two, I started out with the crankbait. And I wish I had a good reason why I started out with that, but I'm glad I did, because when I had that 15 pounds on day one, I put myself in a hole. I think I was like in 70 or 80th place with 15 pounds. And so that wasn't good. That was really bad for that term. I put myself in a hole. And so I knew I had to kind of catch a pretty big bag to get back inside the check cut on day two. The weights typically drop on day two, but if you can usually double up and then have a few pounds more, you're gonna skyrocket up the leaderboard pretty high. So I show up on day two and I just thought, I was like, man, I need to throw a crankbait because it's like the right depth for a crankbait. There's grass there. You should probably try that. So I show up, I started throwing a crankbait, and within 15 minutes, I got my limit. I probably had like 14 or 15 pounds. I already know I'm probably going to go up in the standings because I got a 13 or 14 early that day. So I knew I didn't have to worry about any of that. And, didn't have to, I was already ahead of where I was the day before. It took me all day to catch 15 on day one. And I was like almost there on day two within 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm relaxed. But the adversity part, I really put myself in a big hole by only catching 15 pounds on a drop shot. Changing that crankbait is what really put me ahead of schedule. It gave me a little bit better bag. Put me just catching better fish on the crankbait. So what I want to talk about, and we can jump to the next slide. I don't remember where our next slide is. I should explore that. Why? There's a couple things. How I landed on the crankbait in this grass situation is a couple things. It's the perfect imitator of a shad forage. You remember I tell you we were catching the hints of a shad spawn? Well, shad spawn was going on that roadbed. I just didn't see it. And on day 2, it got really still and calm. And it was even more still than it was on day 1. And I could see the shad spawning. I would catch fish and they were spitting up shad. I could see the shad spawning. And I also could actually see the road running through the grass. I didn't find that in practice. I didn't realize it was a road running through there until it calmed down on day 2. I can actually see what I was fishing. But the crankbait is a perfect imitator of shad. That's why I was throwing the crankbait. That's why it works so well. What I really should say. Crankbait has a way more erratic action than a drop shot, a jig, or anything else that you would throw a drop on the bottom. So that just you get fish to bite a lot easier that way. Fish are a little bit more apt to. You can trigger bites better with the crankbait than you can with anything that drags the bottom. Second thing is the crankbait is not convenient to throw in grass. I'm sure somebody's going to put this in the chat at some point today. All right, I'm fishing a crankbait in grass, man. I'm getting snagged up a little bit. What do I need to do? That's a part of it. That is a part of it. We'll talk a little bit about my setup, and you can mitigate that a little bit. But a crankbait is a great lure to fish in grass. It's underutilized in heavy grass. If you have just a few cranks on a crankbait in grass, it's worth throwing it because nobody else is going to do that because you're fighting the grass a lot of times, and that's a lot of work, and most people won't do it. There's times where it's not the best lure, but there's times in the summertime, specifically, crankbait is hard to beat in hydrilla or submerged grass. As you can see, nobody's going to do that. It's not as convenient. I like the crankbait as well because I can cover water, reach out there and touch them 50, 80, 100 foot. They'll come up schooling. I can get it way out there. So throwing a crankbait, that's why I like to throw it. So I can reach out there and touch them. It's not convenient. Not a lot of people are going to do it. I can cover a lot of water. It has erratic action. It's a good imitator of shad forage. Something else you need to know technique-wise when I'm fishing this tournament, angles matter. I almost want to pull some of the footage back up. So I made circles. This flat is probably, I don't know, this flat is not big at all. It's probably 2 acres flat that I'm fishing. I fished it for 3 days, y'all. I fished 1, 2, or 3 acre flat for 3 days. Circling, and I would get there in the morning and I would not pull up the trolling motor until, I might move once or twice during the day, but in the video, a lot of times I can make the edit look like I'm running all over the place and I really just fish the same spot all day. And that video is one of them. Sometimes I just do that to make the video interesting because nobody really wants to sit there and watch you fish one spot all day. But if I'm being honest, in that tournament, if I caught over the 3 days, if I caught 60 bass, 53 of them come off of that one spot that you saw there. 53 of the 160 bass that I caught come off that one spot. And so it's really important for you to find areas like that if you can, because number one, you make fewer decisions you have to make during the day, the better your chances are catching a really good bag of fish. But what I want to talk about is fishing an area like this, and anytime you're fishing grass, angles matter. Angles matter. And what I mean by that, the way you bring your lure through an area, down a bank, through grass, that matters so much. And so you're probably thinking, well, how do you fish an area that small, an acre or two for 3 days, 8 or 9 hours a day? Like, do the fish not run out? I mean, they will eventually, but how you maximize that is by hitting every angle that's possible in that grass. Left to right, right to left, top to bottom, east to west, northwest to southwest. You're going to hit it at every angle. Every time you bring that crankbait from a different direction, you're giving that bass a different look that he hasn't seen. So angles are so important with all lures, but specifically with crankbaits. because your angle determines how that bait deflects off of the grass, off of the roadbed, off of the rocks, off of the bottom, or whatever you're fishing. Your angles matter a lot when you're talking about fishing a crankbait in particular. All right, we can jump to our next one. I think we're just going to be talking about our setup from here on out, and then I'll jump to questions. So, far as my setup, you guys have seen. So this is back a couple years ago. I was using my favorite cranking stick for that one. And I'll tell you a little secret. So in 22, 23, I was still using my favorite cranking stick. When I moved to level and wanted to do a signature rod, guess what I did? I handed them both of my cranking sticks, and I said, copy this. It's the same thing. We got it pretty doggone close. The only thing we changed is we went from EVA handle to cork handle. And I put 2 keepers on the new level Be-Like composite rod. So my rod was 7.2 composite. I can actually even grab one if you want me to. I've talked about it so much here in the app. I feel like most of you already know what it is. But I'll grab one just for all intents and purposes. I'll grab one for you. But I use my level 7.2 cranking stick. I probably should already had this out, huh? 7.2. The reason I was using the 7.2 is you can reach out, touch them. You can see like accuracy wasn't really what I was going for in that particular tournament. I was going for more distance, covering a bunch of water was the deal in that particular tournament. This one right here. So this rod right here, this is what I crank with, 7.2 Be-Like composite. So this is a composite. So when I'm cranking, throwing a chatterbait, and now sometimes even a jerkbait, I exclusively use composite rods. If it's treble hooks, I try to use a composite rod. So you probably need to know what is a composite rod. Pretty much all our rods are composite. I'm talking about a graphite glass composite. So the resin that's used to make these rods is... That scared me. My lid on my boat closed. The material, the resin, the material that the rod's made out of is graphite and glass mixed. Glass is really heavy. However, glass has a lot of to it. The word that they use in the rod world is it's parabolic. That word drives me crazy, but it's a lot more forgiving tip. Graphite is a lot less forgiving, but it's lighter. You mix the two, they have a baby, and you got the graphite composite rod. So I use the composite rod, a little bit of glass in it, a little bit of graphite. It just helps you stay hooked up. You'll notice when I'm fighting a lot of those fish that I was kind of opening the bill. When you're using treble hook baits, this is very important. When you're using treble hooks bait, it's really important when you learn how to open your spool up and let the fish kind of run with the bait. If you keep that line tight when they're jumping and showing out and he's just barely got a hook, you're going to lose them 90% of the time. I'll still lose some fish occasionally, but I'm definitely losing less than I would if I was using a stiff rod with it. 7.2 graphite composite rod, 6:8:1 gear ratio bait caster, and then I'm always fluorocarbon. You don't have to talk to me about no braid to fluorocarbon and none of this. I'm not using braid to fluorocarbon because I need the fluorocarbon so the fish don't see it, or I need the fluor. None of that. I'm not using a braid. If you fish out a kayak, it kind of makes sense, but I'm not using braid. I don't have any reason to use braid. I'm gonna be using fluorocarbon, 15-pound test fluorocarbon, and then square bill. So right now I got, I've actually been fishing some grass with this, and this is a little Fritz side crankbait that I got tied on here. But in that particular tournament, I was using a square bill crankbait. Let's see if I got that one on my wall. A lot of the crankbaits that I use a lot, I do not have on my wall. If I use it a lot, it's probably in my boat. If it's on this wall, I I think it's cool, but I probably don't use it. You know, I think it's a good bait. I think it's a good color, but I probably don't use it if it's easily accessed like that. But usually it's in my boat. Just a square bill 2.5, a square bill crankbait that runs 2 to 4 foot. Bass Mooch makes a couple square bills. um, they just acquired a company called Azuma, and they have a really good square bill that I like a lot. I forget what the name of the square bill is. It the Square Boss, I feel like, is the name of it. That crankbait is really good, by the way. Like really good. It's got a circuit board lip in it. It comes with really good hooks. It's called Square Boss. Throws really well. I like that crankbait a lot so far. They have another one called a Bones. The Bones doesn't get quite as deep, which can work for you sometimes, especially when you're fishing grass. Throwing a crankbait that doesn't get quite as deep in the water. So the Bones that Azuma Square Boss is a good square bill crankbait, but you want something that gets 2 to 4 foot deep. I'm about to do this same technique when I go Champlain in about 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. I'm gonna be catching some big old smallmouth on square bill. You watch. Um, sometimes I'll use like a 4 to 6 foot diving crankbait fishing grass, so like MR6. Some of the other crankbaits, MR6, DT6, I'll use something like that. Even this is a Frittside 5 that would fall into that category too. Lipless crankbaits and jerk baits. I like fishing around grass. And I know this conversation is around fishing square bills in summertime in grass, but I will use a lip like a jerk bait. If you look at this, I should put this. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm gonna find this video. I actually did on this same exact spot that you're watching me fish. I actually did find. I did catch some bass on a jerk bait. The third day they would not touch a crankbait, and I ended up catching my bass on the third day on a jerk bait on the same spot. Now, why did they switch to that? I don't know. Why did they stop biting the crankbait on day 3? I have no idea. Same exact conditions. You remember when I was telling you about adversity, being ready to be flexible? Yeah, you got that. That's a prime example of that. You just got to make sure. Let's see here. I'm gonna find the link to this video so you can, if anybody cares to watch the whole video. I didn't think it made sense to give you a lot of clips, because if you want to watch the whole clips, you could just go to YouTube and watch the whole thing. I'm gonna put this in the chat right now. Copy link. I think there's 2 or 3 videos from this tournament. There's day 1, day 2, and then there's also a championship day tournament vlog as well. There we go. And you'll see me on day 3. I couldn't catch him on day 3 on the crankbait. I ended up catching him on the jerkbait in the grass. Jerkbait's a killer in grass. I know we got quite a few people in the app. Ray loves to throw a jerkbait. With jerkbait in grass. Square in the same place you would throw a jerkbait in grass, you could throw a square bill. The two can work together. The crankbait's gonna be a little bit more aggravating, but remember, sometimes the key to fishing is putting a bait that's not convenient to use in a place that most people aren't willing to put it there. So putting a crankbait in around docks where most people wouldn't throw a crankbait, that would work. Putting the crankbait in grass where most people wouldn't throw it in thick grass, sometimes that'll work. You're like, well, I'll stay hung up. I know, but if you can throw it in there and get it to go 10 foot without getting snagged, sometimes that's worth it. Throwing a jerk bait in laydowns where most people wouldn't throw a jerk bait in laydowns, sometimes that will work because nobody will do it. It's kind of aggravating. A jerk bait doesn't throw that well. It's kind of cumbersome to throw. Learn to start trying to think outside about what's a bait that's really inconvenient to throw and using that bait in that situation. Okay. Rod reel flip. Yeah, so that one we don't have to really use that slide right there, Michael. That was my mistake because I forgot we're not talking about rod reel line for flipping and pitching here. We're talking about rod reel line for crankbaits. So it's my graphite composite 7'2" and a 6'10" for smaller crankbaits. Or if you're trying to be more accurate, I almost always use 681 gear ratio reel when I'm cranking. I almost always use 15-pound test fluorocarbon when I'm cranking. And that's really it. I very rarely go under 12-pound test for cranking because why? I'm not doing it. People will tell you that you get your crankbait to go down a little deeper if you use like 8 or 10. I mean, y'all go ahead and do that. I'm not doing that. Throwing my crankbaits off. I'm gonna give me 15, 12 if I'm feeling a little sassy. Sometimes I might feel a little sassy and I'll use 12, but most of the time it's gonna be fishing 15-pound tests. All right. Do we have any questions here? Fishing grass in the summertime with crankbaits. I got any questions? Let me see. I'm gonna go through, Michael, if you see any, bird dog them up for me.
I haven't really seen any.
No questions there. Let's see.
When do you choose a crankbait over a chatterbait?
Oh, that's a good question. When should I choose a crankbait over a chatterbait? Well, number one for me, almost every time until I know better. For questions like that, I'm gonna have both of them tied on the deck. I can tell you, there's another guy fishing. If you watch that tournament vlog, there's another guy fishing that area with me throwing a chatterbait. I never saw him catch a bass. I know it would be an extreme under exaggeration for me to say I didn't catch 20 bass there every day in 3 days. I want to say there were days where I caught 40 to 50 bass off that area. I never saw this guy catch a single bass on a chatterbait. I couldn't tell you why. I really don't. But the two are interchangeable. When you're fishing an area like this, you'd be crazy not to have both tied on the deck, and let the bass answer you that. So throw the crankbait for an hour or two, throw the chatterbait for an hour or two. Look at the data. If the data says that the chatterbait is the best bait for the day, we throw chatterbait the rest of the day. We look at the data, and if it says crankbait is the best bait to throw, we throw crankbait the rest of the day. But the two baits, really anything that will hit that zone that I'm talking about, that 2 to 4 foot zone of fishing grass, is going to be legit for you to fish in. I think to use to catch fish there. Let's see. I don't see any other questions. Chandler, we're talking about fishing Gunnersville. Oh, he said I could say that before I bought. Ray said I could say that before I bought the new one. Yeah, same as Zach Rod's. Same as Zach Rod's, Ray. It's just switch to cork. I got two keepers. So the difference between this new graphite composite rod and the level one, a couple things that I thought I'd like to improve on it. The blank, I didn't really mess with it. The guides didn't mess with it. The only thing I changed, I put two keepers on it. This seems like a very subtle change, but this ticks me off. So you put your rods in the rod locker, and if every single rod has the keeper down here on the butt or the keeper right here on the blank, then all your crankbaits can still get tangled up. And so since you have two keepers, one here, okay, and then one there, what that allows me to do is I can put one rod, put a crankbait here, one rod, put a crankbait there. Or if I'm throwing a jerk bait, I hate when I put a jerk bait up here and then it reaches all the way up here and it gets caught in my rod sock. So if I got a really long bait, a topwater, or a jerk bait, I put it on this bottom keeper and that keeps it from snagging up in my rod locker. So we changed that, and I switched the cork because I just like the way cork looks now. It's not better or worse. I just like the way cork looks now. I'm just in the court. Like buying sneakers. Some days I'm in the white sneakers, and some days I'm in the black sneakers. It just depends. Okay.
Uh, John asks, shad colored crankbait.
Yeah. So since I knew, keep in mind, using that lake breakdown process, I kind of knew there was a little bit, we were at the remnants of a shad spawn. And so I was actually throwing a white crankbait. And I actually may even still have that specific crankbait from that tournament. I know that sounds crazy. That's 3 or 4 years ago. I'm pretty sure I still have that exact crankbait. If y'all don't have anywhere to rush off to, I'm gonna find it. Oh, and that slam was oh yeah, just broke one of my rods. I slammed that big slam that y'all just heard. That was just my lid coming down on one of my rods just then. But I did that. I'm gonna show you. I'm pretty sure I still got that crankbait. I remember looking at it here recently. I do have it. I wore that sucker down to a pulp. Okay, so this is funny. Crankbait, I talk about crankbait fishing. It's probably one of my favorite things to do. And I carry about that many crankbaits in my boat. Like square bills, that's about all I have. I only use a few colors. And I carry multiples of those few colors. White with black back. I carry about 6. Black and chartreuse. I carry about 6 of those. And I usually have like reds. Put it in gear. Show me where they're at, Billy. That's it. I don't do all of that. So like my black and chartreuses, and I'll tell you, I'm gonna show you, I'm not bullcrapping. So that's the color that I was throwing at Gunnersville right there. This is not the one, but I got one of them. I got the crankbait that I was throwing. White with black. White and black. This is the actual crankbait that I was fishing that day. I haven't used it since. If I can get it to focus. It's so bright it won't focus. But that's the crankbait that I fished that day. I haven't thrown it since. Wore the hooks out on them. But you can see that was also white and black. White, black on the top, white on the sides. I always keep the black and chartreuses. And then, bro, like that's it. I don't throw nothing else. This one right here. Black and chartreuse. I got a few colors like this. I got a few of this like ghost colors, but you notice how clean and nice that one looks? Because I ain't throwing it. That's why it looks like that. If you look at any of my crankbaits that have like a chartreuse. Now this is what I'm gonna catch a bunch of smallmouth on in a couple weeks though, is this one. Perch color. So that white and black. Really, you can do all your damage with those 2 colors right there. White and black for shad. This one right here for whatever that's for. I don't even know what you call it for. And then, maybe something red if you want to do that. Most people say red, throw red in the winter because red is in the winter and the crawfish are bull crap. You catch fish on red in the winter because that's what you throw. I'm actually doing a video on this very subject for YouTube. I am going to go catch some fish on crankbaits on red now. I'm saving it for July. Because what's the common what does everybody say about red in the winter? Oh, red works in the winter because the crawfish are doing bull crap, man. That ain't got nothing to do with it. Got nothing to do with the water being 50 degrees. It ain't got nothing to do. You're catching fish on red because you're throwing red. We ain't throwing red right now. We're not throwing red in June. That's why we ain't catching nothing on them. Long story short, white and black, chartreuse and something, and chartreuse and dark are my two favorite colors. No, so I see your question. Mark is asking, um, do I purposely take off my rear hook on my crankbait to help it go through grass better? I do not. I'd put a third hook on my crankbait if I could. I am worried about. I am much more worried about catching a fish than I am hooking the grass. And some of that's going to come with casting accuracy and learning how to read the grass lines. That's probably underappreciated, especially for this technique is reading the grass and knowing where it's thin, where it's thick, and where you can bring your crankbait through. If you learn how to do that really good, there's not going to be a need to take the hook off. If I take the hook off the back of my crankbait, I'm going to throw a chatterbait. If I need to do that to get the bait, get the bite, I don't think your crankbait is the best bait to use at that point. Hey, hey, John says screen shit that doc. I like it, John. I'm here for it. Oh, I'm gonna throw in chartreuse and
Do,
black. Well, back. Let's
do
see
you
what else we
change the
got here.
retrieve for grass conditions?
Let's look at the retrieve. Let's look at the video because I can sit here and talk about retrieves all day, but let's look at how I'm retrieving this. There's some POV footage in a couple of these. Look at this. Oh, I got it. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Sorry. Let me go back. So if you look at this footage, you can see exactly how I'm retrieving. I want you to look at this. You can see how far offshore I am too. Like I'm not fishing the shoreline. You got it, yeah. I don't worry about him being wrong. Right by that pole that I casted it 10 times today. 23. So watch this. Why didn't I do this? You see that stick in the water right there? That is a pole marking the high spot on this flat. You don't need to try to run your boat across there. You knock the lower unit off. You can see all those islands out in the distance. I caught a few fish out there too, but it just wasn't the spot like this was. You can see that retrieve. You can see for the most part. But you see I'm popping that rod tip a lot, pulling. That's a big one. Notice how I open that spool up. Open the spool again. Click it back over. Open the spool again. Do not trust the drag on a bait caster. God, he's so barely hooked. He's so barely hooked. Hopefully he'll turn around and get some more hooks in him. Thank you. Ah. He's so barely hooked, man. I ran right into it. He's free. Let's say there's another fish. I think that was our last fish catch. Let me go back to another one, POV, where you can kind of see the retrieve. There's a lot of rod tip snapping. You can watch it here too. You'll notice I'm popping my rod tip a lot. And he loads up on it right before. Way more fish catches than I am. Got a rod tip popping. Let's look at this one. So it looks like you see that rod tip just popping it, making sure that I don't have any grass on it is the biggest thing. Because I'm running it into this grass. It's like a medium retrieve. but then popping that rod tip every time I hook up. It's not a fast retrieve. Let's go to another fish catch. All right, let's look at this one. See, pretty much rod, but see that rod tip. You can see that pulling and popping. I know that there's grass on it. You kind of get used to feeling it. And I immediately got the bite right after I popped that grass off of it. Let's go back again. Whoa. That's what I'm talking about, baby. Yes. See, rod pop, pop. Watch this. Popping it up high. Get it going. You got it. So that's what the retrieve looks like. It's kind of hard to put words into how are you retrieving it, but I can show you a lot better than I can tell you when it comes to a retrieve. All right, let's see. I'll get back and see if there's any other questions here. We should probably let's see if we got any other questions here.
Jacob asked, do you have certain conditions you seek to throw crankbait, like windy or calm days, or is it more of a structure thing?
It's more of a structure thing for me. So when it comes to throwing a crankbait fish, what's the best conditions for it? It depends on it's everything's context always. If we're talking about fishing a crankbait up north of smallmouth, I probably want it slick and sunny. Fishing with largemouth down south, it's not always the ideal deal conditions to throw it in sunny, bright. But you saw it was slick, it was sunny, it was slick on this video where you watch me catch them on a crankbait. So it can be a very false statement to assume that you need wind, etc., to get them to bite a crankbait. But I will tell you, a lot of days that does help. But if it is slick and sunny, it doesn't mean they won't bite them either. To tell you a lot of times, I mean, this has a lot to do with just my angler strengths and confidence. And I lean towards a crankbait a lot. I know what it does, and I know what my crankbaits are doing when I'm fishing them. So I lean towards them. I don't care if it's sunny, hot, cold, windy, a lot of boat pressure, or two boats. I got a lot of confidence in it, so I'm just going to throw it. But conditions that it works really, really good in is kind of like what I was talking about. If you got sparse grass and 2 to 6 foot in the summertime, I will say this, going back to the retrieve, speed is your friend with a crankbait, especially in the summer. It can even be in the wintertime, but speed is your friend. Sometimes the faster, the better, especially in the summertime. But when I'm going to fish a crankbait, is all going to depend on, is this a time, where I'm fishing at, does a crankbait hit that zone good? So let me put that in layman's terms. If I'm fishing a row of docks, I really can't put the crankbait in there into a row of docks the best, like around pylons and ropes and cables. I can't keep the bait low to put it in there where the fish are. Can I catch fish on a crankbait around docks? Absolutely. Is it the best, most efficient way to fish docks? Probably not, because of how I have to present the bait. I could say the same thing with a spinnerbait. I catch fish on docks with a spinnerbait. I can even show you some videos right now. Is it the best bait? Probably not. It's hard to keep the spinnerbait low and pitch it in there with places where I can fish around docks. Now, the same exact scenario in this flat that I'm fishing is wide open water, 2, 4, 5, 6 foot of water with grass scattered out here and there with some pockets and ball spots and places where it's thick and a row bed runs through. Crankbaits perform really good around rocks. Really hard. That makes it a prime candidate for me to zone and stay in that zone for a long time, and I can cast it a long ways. I'm fishing this flat of infinite grass, and there's all these little holes and pockets. I can cast it a long way, get it away from the boat. That's important, and so that makes the crankbait good for that. It's just a good tool to use for that. So, like, I mean, I don't know what trade. I don't know if I got any tradesmen in here. Um, I could take a regular old carpenter's hammer and go pull up the carpet in my kid's room if I needed to with just a hammer. It'd be a whole lot easier to do it with like the right tools. I don't even know what you call it. That thing that you use to pull up carpet with, to pull it off the side of the walls. I can't even think of the name of it right now. Works a whole lot better with that. I know John does. He has a detailing business. John Wilson here in the app. He has a detailing business. I could polish my boat with this bath towel right here. And I know y'all probably wondering why I got a bath towel in my garage, and I honestly don't even really know my own self. I could polish my boat with that. It'd be a whole lot better if I got a microfiber towel. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with the baits. You're going to use the bait that you can present the best in that situation most of the time. But even like I mentioned, sometimes it's a good idea to use a bait that maybe is a little bit inconvenient to fish. But I'm always going to rely on the data. One thing we talked about this morning when I was talking with Mark is I really think we have to release ourselves of the idea that we're going to show up to the lake and put our boat in and know what to do. We want to embrace the idea of showing up to the lake with discovery in mind. I am going fishing today to figure out what works. Not I'm going fishing today to catch bass right now. That sounds very counterintuitive. Show up to the lake with discovery in mind. I am going to figure out if there's any fish on this lake. It sets you up for, you can't lose with that mentality. When I go to the lake to catch fish, if I don't catch fish now, it feels like I've wasted money. I've spent $100,000 in a bass boat that I'm not even catching fish in. I've got all these electronics and 15,000 different rods, and I'm a member of this stupid group called SUF Community, and I spent all this money and all this stuff, and I ain't even catching any fish. When you show up with that mindset, it sets you up to lose. When you show up to the water, you put your boat in with the mindset that I am going to discover if there's fish over here or if there's not. If they like black and short juice or if they like white. If they want a crankbait or if they want to chatterbait. I'm going to discover if there's grass on this end of the lake. I'm going over here to discover if they want to be in the grass or if they want to be on the rocks. I'm going out today to discover if the smallmouth are biting the best or if the largemouth are biting the best. I'm going fishing today to figure out if the storm yesterday blew out the upper end of that river. I'm going out today to see if there's fish on beds or not. You cannot lose. If the fish are on beds when you went out, then you win. If the fish are not on beds when you went out, you still win because now you don't waste another fishing trip looking for it. That mentality of discovery sets you up to always be productive when you go fishing. All right. Let's see what else we got. I saw something that I wanted to talk about while I was talking.
I didn't see any other questions.
I saw one that I didn't talk about. Okay, here's one, but it's not one I was looking for. So David says in that area, lipless crankbait works. Okay, we'll try square bill, but used to using red eye shad in that shad color. Yeah, lipless crankbait could have worked where I was at. It's a bit noisy where I was at. I just really like a square bill, man. I know what it's doing. I don't know how to explain it. Like I just know that product so well. Okay, here it is. This is what I was. Oh, and this may have been what you said. Are you fishing over grass, through grass, or in pockets with the crankbait or chatterbait? I am fan casting over a flat, and if it gets over a pocket, great. If it doesn't, then I'm going to come up with a lot of grass. But this is a big flat with scattered patches and a roadbed running through it. So I'm not. I can't see. It's beneath. Everything's beneath the surface. I have an idea where there's bald spots. I have an idea where I do know where the roadbed is because I marked it. But all of this is. I'm fan casting. I'm gridding this thing off and casting. You remember I talked about angles? I'm hitting all of these structures at an angle. The road, the grass, the hard spots at different angles. More so than looking for pockets and casting to specific pockets. That would be more like a flipping and pitching type deal. So, Johnny, this is a question that comes up in every live class I ever did. John says, how long do you try a specific approach or bait until you try something different? You try it until you lose confidence in it. You try it until you get information that says you need to move on to something else. There's not a time limit. I don't say 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hour, 2 days, a month. You can't think that way. Fishing doesn't work linear like that. Fishing works. It's if you're asking that question, it's time to move on. It's time to move to another area or try. It's time to move to a different bait. But there's not a time period that I give anything because I have extreme confidence in a technique that I'll use it all day. I'll look for water to match my techniques more than I look for lures to match the bass. I'll look for bass that match the technique that I have strength in, especially when you're showing up to lakes that you don't know. Looking for bass, looking for bass that match, like going to a lake and looking to match whatever's going on that lake on 60,000 acres can be overwhelming. But when I take one lure and I'm just looking for water to match that one lure, that one technique, I eliminate 90% of the lake just in that thought process. I really don't have to search through 10% of the lake. Does that work every time? Not necessarily, but it works most of the time. And that's the thought process that we have. The lake breakdown process that we talk about in the app answers that question for you. Where are the fish eating? What's available? And what's my strengths as an angler? And I do that several times throughout the day. I'll do that before I leave the house to give me an idea of what to tie on and where I'm going to put my boat in. And then as I receive information as I'm fishing throughout the day, I do that process all over again. I know what's available. Well, I've tried the docks. What's the next thing available? Well, it's grass. I tried that for 2 hours, didn't catch nothing. What's the next thing available? Where's laydowns? Well, I fished that for 3 hours, didn't catch nothing. That's just information. Don't fish no more laydowns. Now I'm going to docks. Docks. Oops, caught 3 bass on docks. Now I'll start looking for more docks to fish. So be thinking that way. Now I'm gonna fish in this creek for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 minutes. Like don't think linear like that. Fishing is not, there's no absolutes in bass fishing. We process the information that they give us. You go out and you throw a chatterbait for 2 hours. You get no bites. You can do one of two things. You can look for more water that matches the chatterbait, or you put the chatterbait down and grab something else. You do the process over again. Okay, what's available? What's something that will get fished is available? Oh, there's current breaks. The tide is low now. The tide is high now. There's shade for me to fish. You're just going to do that lake breakdown process over and over throughout the day. You guys are already doing it, but you're doing it unconsciously. You're already doing a lake breakdown process, but you're just haphazardly doing it by going through the motions. When you start to get intentional about your lake breakdown process, fishing becomes a lot more fun. You're going to catch a lot more fish. Okay. I didn't see any other questions. Did you, Mike?
I haven't seen any more.
Okay. Uh, if there's nothing else, we'll jump off here. Make sure you guys go check out. If you haven't, as soon as I get off here, don't wait. Go look at the live we did yesterday with Mark Daniels Jr. Or not yesterday, this morning, earlier this afternoon, with Mark talking about he was flipping and pitching grass. Everything in today has been about grass, flipping and pitching grass. We'll do another live tomorrow, 12 p.m. and 6. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. we'll have Bobby Bakewells. If there's anybody in the app that ever wanted to learn how to fish glide baits. Tomorrow is going to be live for you. I'm going to have Bobby Bakewell tomorrow at 6 p.m. We'll talk about how to fish glide baits, but not more specifically how to fish glide baits in a fishing tournament. All right.
We're doing another bass challenge next week, right?
Bass challenge starts Saturday. Big bass challenge starts Saturday. Saturday to the following Sunday, I think, which is the 5th, July 5th, if I'm not mistaken. We'll start another challenge. Sounds good. Appreciate everybody showing up. Great questions. Great questions here in the app. If you got any others, feel free to shoot me a message in the app. If you're new to the app, we have just click on the message tab in the community section, or is it on the community? Yeah, you gotta go to the community section, go to messages. You can send me any kind of question, anything you want to talk about there. And just check that at least a couple times a week. All right. Y'all have a good rest of your evening. Appreciate everybody tuning in today.
See ya.
Take care.